Hello and welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. I'm Jeff, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Bo Brock, and number 81 himself, the smooth, the sultry, Mr. Frank Sanders here on an MLB opening day, but we're talking NFL and football. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good. Good to see you, Bo. Good to see you, JV. I am definitely a fan of Major League Baseball. Of course, you guys know my past. The Mariners out of college and the Cubs out of high school. But I am looking forward to the start of something new for the Diamondbacks. They sucked so bad last year. Hopefully, they will do something good for the PHNX D-backs, and maybe be something pretty special.
Yeah, our guys, Derek and Jesse, they got it held down. They're having a watch party over at the Ainsworth. I've got a little FOMO for that, but I'm old school to where I think Monday with opening day. What about you guys? Monday was the day. It was a full slate of games. It's synonymous with baseball, but now it's Thursday. It's weird.
You know what I hate is when they do like the delayed one where they do one overseas. Not that I don't like baseball overseas, but then they'd wait like 10 days and then they'd start the rest of the games. That always used to throw me off. I feel like they're starting today because of the lockout and everything else. I'm just happy we get 162 games. So we root for the Diamondbacks. Like Frank and I low key because our Midwestern ties also root for the St. Louis Cardinals. Bo, you played collegiate baseball, correct?
Right. But I can't tell you the team I grew up watching because it's so pitiful.
Let's hear it.
I am a diehard. I was still root for them, even though they're putrid Baltimore Orioles. It used to be my squad because I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in D.C. We didn't have the Nats growing up, so next closest team, 45 minutes up the Beltway, I watched Cal Ripken Jr. play every day, and that was it's fun growing up. But it's been some thin years lately. But the D-backs, tell Marte in the fold for a while. Try to break that down in football terms. No matter how you cut it up, they got a steal with Marte on a 5-year deal over $70 million.
Everybody loves a rebuild, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are fully in one. The Cardinals were in one not too long ago, 2018, 2019. And gentlemen, speaking of those years, that's where we're going to start today. We heard some rumblings a couple weeks back with the Brian Flores lawsuit against the NFL that the Cardinals were listed in that lawsuit. And as of this morning, via Adam Schefter, ESPN, and among others, Steve Wilks, former Arizona Cardinal head coach, has joined that lawsuit with Brian Flores. This tweet coming from Adam Schefter earlier today. The complaint filed by Steve Wilks, as alleged in the amended complaint in 2018, Mr. Steve Wilks was discriminated against by the Arizona Cardinals in a manner consistent with the experience of many black coaches. Mr. Wilks was hired as a quote-unquote bridge coach and was not given any meaningful chance to succeed. He was unfairly and discriminatorily fired after just one season. His white GM, meaning Steve Keim, who made poor personnel decisions, so that's interesting, was convicted for a DUI during the offseason. It was given a contract extension, of course, last month. Wilks was replaced by a white coach, Cliff Kingsbury. We talked about it, no prior experience in the NFL, losing head coach at Texas Tech. Then he gets Kyler Murray, who has been a much longer leash than Steve Wilks and has been credited to his success, that being Murray with Kingsbury. That said, Mr. Wilks, given the same opportunity afforded to Kingsbury, surely would have succeeded as well, meaning Steve Wilks with Kyler Murray. The allegations pertaining specifically to Mr. Wilks, so on and so forth, amended to the complaint. A ton to unpack there. Big headline bullets from that is Steve Wilks is feeling discriminated against, meaning with this process with the Arizona Cardinals. It also mentions Ray Horton, former Arizona Cardinal defensive coordinator, time with the Tennessee Titans, not being, considered for that position. So yeah, I don't know where you guys want to start other than not a good look for the organization.
Oh,
I mean, I also think there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, unfair, absolutely. I think Steve Wilks, he was not dealt a great hand as far as the roster, probably the worst roster in a decade for the NFL. Arizona Cardinals, if it wasn't for Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers and those 2 victories, and then Aaron Rodgers pulling some punches for the Packers and trying to get Mike McCarthy fired in Green Bay, they don't have any wins that season. It was just an awful year that the organization almost wants to just rip out of the franchise encyclopedia like it never happened, but they have to relive it now here in 2022. Discriminate, racism, that's what this lawsuit is built around. And with that, I think as far as racism, it stems from ignorance, stupidity, but it doesn't mean that every stupid move is racist. And as far as the Arizona Cardinals go, they made a bunch of dumb moves that offseason and that season. Steve Keim he deserved to be fired after that year. He should have followed Wilks out the door. Heads had to have rolled for the 2018 season with the Arizona Cardinals. And unfortunately, Keim has a 20-plus year relationship with Michael Bidwell. And Steve Wilks was barely there a year. So, I mean, you're just not going to win that battle. I really don't believe it was racism. I have seen this organization has been very progressive and has created a lot of opportunities that haven't been there with other organizations in the NFL. It was a bad time for the franchise. I don't chalk it up to racism. I think it was a dark time for this organization.
Yeah, they use words that was they're eye-catching words, but I agree with you on that. I don't think it was racism behind it. I do think that it was an unfair firing from a scenario where the general manager could have been fired for his personal and off-the-field situations, and then again, a track record of just bad personnel decision and bad draft picks. It's been horrible on Steve Keim's watch from that standpoint. But I think that the argument, and when it comes to this conversation of the Rooney Rule, we already know what that is. That elephant in the room is what it is. The owners are going to hire who they want to hire. How the hiring practices of the Rooney Rule simply just says basic. You just got to give a guy an interview, whether you agree or not, whether you want him on your team. You just got to give him an interview. Let him sit at the table, tell you what he think his vision is for you and your franchise, and how he can go about taking your team to the next level. That's basically the Rooney Rule. The unfortunate side is that we're having to see or hear scenarios where that practice is not done and it's not being honored by the owners of the NFL. And so I can see why that is a problem. Look, him joining that lawsuit and trying to, ban amongst many of the black coaches that are in the NFL who have wanted to be a head coach. Again, look, that is the pinnacle of coaching, is to have an opportunity to be the head coach of an NFL organization. If you're coaching in the NFL, they've changed the goalpost several times. Now they've moved toward where, in order to be a head coach, you had to be a defense coordinator, offense coordinator. Now you could be a special teams coach and never, ever, ever have been a head coach on no part of the planet. So we've seen that out of the New York Giants hiring of their head coach. And we've seen the debacle of that situation. So it's not a good look on the organization once he put himself part of that. But there are some things that should have been that can be addressed and pointed to by the keeping of Steve Keim.
I remember feeling proud of this organization when they hired Steve Wilks because of the fact that I don't want to call it a leap of faith because I think that's disrespectful for Steve. But he wasn't considered a hot commodity. I don't know if he interviewed for any other jobs. It didn't seem like he was strongly considered for any other jobs that offseason. And so the Cardinals kind of went out of left field with the hiring. Remember, there was that story of he and Keim like hanging out on vacation, and he really resonated with Steve. And it was like reading the newspaper clippings. It was like, Mike Tomlin 2.0, where Tomlin just got his foot in the door and impressed the Steelers enough where they had to hire him. And Wilks, we know this, gave a hell of a press conference, probably was fantastic in the interview room, and had a ton of success as the defensive coordinator for Carolina, was an interim coach for a little bit. And the Cardinals viewed him as an ascending coach. And once upon a time, the Cardinals were the first organization in NFL history to have both a head coach and a GM, both of African-American, both Black individuals. That was Rod Graves, and that was, Denny Green, RIP Denny Green. And so I don't think that this organization, the firing of Wilks, was racially motivated, but at the same time, the optics of it do not look good with Steve Keim, because everybody and anybody on Twitter that day when the news broke that the Cardinals were pivoting off of Steve Wilks said, okay, what about the GM? And we waited and it didn't come out. And so it was assumed, Steve Keim, you're safe. Steve Keim, you've blundered how many draft picks? Steve Keim, you had an extreme DUI. The video is embarrassing. You had to go to jail for a couple of days. Like, if that wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back, you just completed technically the worst season in franchise history, led by an offense that you put together that was the worst in 20 years in the NFL. So I think this would have gone on completely different had they fired Steve Keim and started from scratch. Even if they had brought in Cliff Kingsbury with a different general manager, I think it would have come off completely different. It didn't. You basically flipped the script and said, okay, we're going to replace you with a guy at the collegiate level that has never won. And that's, but fair or not, like Cliff Kingsbury, like he didn't ask to be, put in this situation. Like this is a trend. Kingsbury. Right.
I mean, it was
the McDaniel, right?
You're saying the trend, but we're going back to, remember, you're hiring this guy has not proven he can be a winner.
Bingo.
So that's the point that has to be made. Like, he isn't even proven, even as a head coach on a collegiate level. So how do you get that job? That's the optics. That's the bad part about it. I mean,
I think the answer to that is they went the opposite. They went the opposite of Steve Wilks. They said, tough, hard-nosed defensive coordinator, laid-back offensive young guy.
Yeah, but young guy that hasn't won. Let's put the caveat. This is why I don't want to really get into the conversation of the race part about it when the optics is what they are. I just want to say this as a former player, being in the locker room, seeing that you're hiring guys that are not qualified. That's the part that is baffling. That you're familiar
with that.
Yeah, just let's deal with that. Giving a coach time to prove that he can be a coach. Okay, that's fine. White, black, pink, yellow, female. When we hire the first female coach in the NFL, head coach in the NFL, you got to give her time to prove that she can be the head coach of a team and to develop the team the way she wants it to be, to get the people in the personnel. That's the conversation that, you need to have when we're talking about that. But hiring Cliff Kingsbury and a lot of the coaches that are being hired in the NFL, they're not even qualified for the job to be the head coach of the organization. That in itself is a slap in the face to the players, not only just to the players, but to the fans and all these the guys right here that are chatting, and Jordan, Ryan, Batman, 420. Look, they got reasons, because they're invested in a team, but we're having to suck up the idea that they're hiring guys that are just not qualified for the task. And we're having to accept that, making up excuses, talking about the Rooney Rule. Hey, guess what? That rule, I can understand what it stands for. Just give a guy an interview, an opportunity. Yeah. When you're hiring guys that are not qualified and we're giving them passes, yeah, thank God that it worked out for Steve. It worked out for Cliff, or it's looking like it worked out for Cliff. Or are we getting the same thing that we knew for the last 7 years? You don't finish well, and the team ends up failing. So how do you deal with that from that standpoint when you guys know they're not hiring guys that are qualified?
Right. And there's a great article by former Arizona Cardinal linebacker Sam Acho, who's now in the media business, and he's upstairs versus downstairs. And, it points out that when the Rooney Rule went into effect, we have the same amount of minority coaches as we did then now. So, it's not exactly getting minorities the opportunities. It's getting them more interviews, I'm sure, but it's not putting them in position. But I want to get into real quick the side of this story of Steve Wilks and where I feel like he was overmatched as a head coach, because I think that plays a huge role here. Because I feel bad because it was his only shot really as an NFL head coach, and with the worst roster in that decade. But he lost that locker room within the first 3 weeks. I mean, they got their ass beat by Washington and opened up the season. They weren't even competitive in that game. They got their doors blown off by Los Angeles the next, shut out in week 2. And then week 3, he completely lost the locker room when they were in the game against the Chicago Bears. He puts Josh Rosen and a rookie quarterback. His first NFL licks came with 4 minutes left in that game. And then he pulls his star running back because he missed an assignment or something. And he puts in rookie Chase Edmonds for a 3-yard loss when the Arizona Cardinals offense was actually driving to potentially win that game. And they chalked it up as, David Johnson, who you can't find a better player, teammate, whatever in NFL history. And they're trying to use him as, to prove a point. I think he lost the locker room. You have Patrick Peterson, who at that point was a model teammate, model player. He was a face of the franchise along with Larry Fitzgerald, and he wants out of town. That was a true testament to how bad things were going at that point. So as much as I think Steve Wilks got a raw deal, he also, this team regressed. It was one of the worst offensive teams in the history of the NFL, 14 points per game. It was worse than the winless Lions. It's just, it was terrible. So, as much as I feel bad for him, he didn't perform, even though it was probably a lose-lose situation. Remember, he changed the defense from a 3-4 to a 4-3. He was a defensive guy. It's just a mess as far as what happened. I don't think he was the scapegoat, but he wasn't the only reason for the organization just being a complete dumpster fire in 2018.
I remember Steve Keim and Michael Bidwell came out after that last season with Bruce Arians, and they said, this is a retool. We're retooling. This is not a rebuild. They lose Carson Palmer. Well, it needed to be a rebuild, but they didn't treat it like that. They also, if we remember, there were 5 or 6 candidates. I say candidates for the Arizona Cardinal head job. There weren't. Pat Shurmur, who was the dumpster fire coach of the New York Giants, said no to interviewing with the Cardinals. Like, Steve Wilks and the Cardinals came together for this hiring in large part because, let's face it, the Cardinals did not have many options, right? They didn't have a quarterback at the time in 2018. If you remember, they had to sign Sam Bradford that offseason. That was not Steve Wilks' decision. They also had not drafted Josh Rosen. They had no incumbency plan at quarterback, and they were picking 15th. And so they were not an attractive destination. They had aging players all over the roster. They had some nice pieces, but a lot of it was unproven. And a lot of people probably looked at Bruce Arians and say, he's getting away from this. This is a team going sideways fast. This is a team that's getting dominated in their own division by the LA Rams. The Cardinals and Steve Wilks had each other, and that was it. The Cardinals were either going to hire Steve Wilks or Brian Flores that offseason, coincidentally enough. They interviewed Brian Flores, who at the time, I believe, was the linebacker coach for the New England Patriots. And so when they blew it up the following offseason, with all due respect to Steve Wilks, it was a year too late. And Steve Wilks was a casualty of that. Was he prepared? No, but he was also, as Bo said, saddled with what was the worst roster in terms of personnel. And I think universally, if you get 10 Cardinal fans, whether Twitter or in real life or whatever, 9 out of 10 fans will tell you Keim should have been fired after that 2018 season. He should have been fired. And then all of this would look incredibly different from a national perspective, even if the Cardinals had gone and hired 2 white administrators, a head coach and a general manager. Keim keeping his job. I don't even care about the Rosen stuff, the Murray stuff. Keim keeping his job makes this whole thing very real, I'm sure, for Steve Wilks.
I agree with you. I mean, the optics is ugly across the board. And it definitely shows Mike has a sense of loyalty to Steve Keim that it still has not produced. I keep going back to the fans, man, because like the fans and the players in the locker room, I don't get to decide who's going to be my coach. And I damn sure don't get to decide who's going to be the receivers coach. But I can tell you in my 9 years, I had one coach that played wide receiver ever. He ever played wide receiver, the position of wide receiver. So that just tells you, man, like the hiring practices that take place in the NFL, it's a cutthroat business. It's a buddy. And if you can get the locker room, you can get the guys that you want, that you feel you can trust. I get that, Bo. I respect that 100% because that is why, Bruce Arians has a ring right now because he's been loyal to the guys and the guys that have been loyal to him have, but they're qualified coaches with time and tenure. And I'm just saying as a fan, you guys, we can argue these points about certain optics, but the reality is that we're still paying and trying to support and fall in love with and be beholden to this team that constantly gives us, some trash. Like right now, what if you knew the back end of this what the Cardinals are doing right now in this offseason is to fail. is to put together another dumpster fire roster with a starting quarterback. Yeah, but the optics does not look like they actually want to be the team that's going to dominate in the NFC this year.
You know what's interesting? Your great point as far as just having those. What Bruce Arians was able to cultivate, and a lot of coaches around the league who have been there for so long, is they have their guys, they have their players, they have guys on their coaching staff. They see them, they know them, they respect them, and they're like, hey, I want to go coach with you. I want to go work with you. When by the time that the Cardinals had a one and done coach with Steve Wilks, and they brought in Cliff Kingsbury with a 35-40 Big 12 record at his alma mater, there was pushback. Guys were like trying to get people to join the staff and work under Cliff Kingsbury. I believe there was pushback. I'm actually surprised that they've improved each and every year under Cliff Kingsbury, with the fact that he didn't have any guys. Like, Cliff Kingsbury did not have a network of coaches or players. I mean, Antoine Wesley's like the only Texas Tech player that's played for him. Like, he didn't have his guys where BA had his guys in Pittsburgh. He had his guys in Indy who came over and played for him, and his coaching staff, guys that would lay down in traffic for him. Where I don't think, Cliff Kingsbury is the player's coach, but he's developed that. He came in fresh with none of that. And I think that's I'm actually impressed by the success that he's had since, having one of the weirdest rises to a head coaching job ever.
Yeah, and you talk about, Keim was able to court Vance Joseph to Arizona. Cliff didn't have connections at the NFL level when he came, and you could make an argument that maybe the same effort was not given to Steve Wilks. We don't know. The staff together, it's a famous line that Dave Pasch said once upon a time in August of that season, was like, this is the most complete and impressive coaching staff I've seen since I've started covering the Cardinals. And then they went out and won 3 games. So you don't know, right? It's a gamble every time. And speaking of a gamble, there's not a better time, in my opinion, gentlemen, outside of football season, to get on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. We've got Major League Baseball opening day. The NBA playoffs are en route. We've got the Masters going on, all of which you can gamble and bet on right now via the DraftKings Sportsbook app, as well as 2 titles are up for grabs on the stacked UFC 273 fight card. Join the action via DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of UFC. New customers can bet $5 on any fighter and get $100 in free bets, win or lose, guaranteed. So choose your fighter, then sit back and watch the action unfold. Anything can happen, as we know in the Octagon with DraftKings Sportsbook. You've got a sure thing. Bet $5, get $200 in free bets. DraftKings, of course, is safe, secure, and reliable. And best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. It's call to action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the promo code PHNX. Throw that $5 down. It's a minimum of $5 on UFC 273. Get $100 in free bets. Gambling in Arizona is 21 and over. Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customer only, minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for more details.
How about this?
Yeah.
Your boy DA said yesterday when we were talking about the Masters, and he was like, he just started rambling off these names of people he didn't know, and he wanted Mr. Mullet to be the guy. That's Cameron Smith, who's actually he's like in second place right now on the leaderboard. He had the lead for most of the day until a couple of guys on the back end are starting to pull out. And he said Dustin Johnson, and Dustin Johnson is the top name on the leaderboard at the Masters right now. So kudos to DA for not being a good golfer at all, who barely watches it, but pull some names out of his butt. And next thing you know, these guys are actually on the board. So if you heard DA yesterday and you put some money down on the DraftKings, look, you should be doing pretty good after day one.
Better lucky than good sometimes, Frank. That's just how it goes, especially in the betting game, and you can build a stack that way. Hey, I see in the chat, Jose, if you're joining us on YouTube, you could see this on the chat. If you're listening to us on the podcast, Jose mentioned that Steve Wilks wanted Josh Allen as his quarterback, not Josh Rosen. It's like, hey, yeah, all of us wanted that, folks. I mean, is that really an argument as far as this? That there was the report that came out earlier today, Johnny, that Steve Wilks wanted Josh Allen and that the Cardinals didn't do anything to move up. They did move up. They went from 15 to 10, and they took Rosen, the 4th quarterback of 5 that went in the first round. It's like what Buffalo gave up to get to 7 was a lot more than I think Steve Keim was willing to get to 10. So, it's just unfortunate. Like, Josh Allen is legit. There are a ton of organizations that wanted him. There was, of course, like, kind of they didn't know. They knew he was a raw prospect. They didn't know he was going to develop into the quarterback that he is. But there was reports all draft season that Steve Keim loved Josh Allen too. So I think that's a moot point.
JV,
we've got one of those reports real quick. We've got one of those reports from Bleacher Report from several years ago in 2018. This is kind of fun to listen to in retrospect.
Cardinals didn't want Josh Rosen.
No, they did not. They tried to trade to Josh Allen. Everything I know is that the number 5 pick with the Broncos, the trade was in place.
And it was with Arizona.
So
that would have been the surprise.
And then Chubb was on the board, and Elway wasn't willing to do that. That was the things I was told. Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals were heartbroken they did not get Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's because the Browns screwed the Cardinals.
Right.
By the Browns passing on Bradley Chubb, Elway went, I was going to trade, but this is one of the few guys I didn't think would be here.
Exactly.
So then Arizona takes their second favorite quarterback? Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy for that to kind of come out because now Allen and Rosen we're just going to be comparing.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
They are.
In retrospect, the Browns screwed themselves by not taking Josh Allen and taking Baker Mayfield over Josh Allen, but that's, yeah.
No, they took Denzel Ward with their second top 5 pick. So they took Denzel Ward, the cornerback. That's what happened. And then it kind of, I forgot about that. That's crazy that the Broncos and the Browns were the reason that the Arizona Cardinals, Steve Wilks era, was just one and done. With all this, we need a little levity. And who else? JJ Watt to the rescue, right? He's the guy that provides some levity to all of our tough conversations. We'll tell you what JJ Watt's up to on social media. He's getting into it with a 90s icon. But first, Johnny, today I posted my second article here for PHNX Sports, PHNX Cardinals. I ranked every single Steve Keim draft.
Unbelievable.
66 draft picks, Frank Sanders. And man, it gets real thin after like the top 10. It's actually not that impressive of a list.
All right, so Frank hasn't seen this list. So Frank, impromptu, I've seen it. I agree with most of it.
Okay.
I want you to guess, Mr. Sanders, I'm going to put you on the spot, the top 5 draft picks, according to Bo Brock, in the Steve Keim era. Top 5, starting with number 5, working your way to number 1.
From 2013 to now. So this is his 10th draft.
It's not hard, Frank. Just think of the best players because there's not many.
I mean, between Buda Baker, Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, definitely him. Of course, Kyler Murray. He's definitely that guy.
You've got 3 of the 5 right now.
It has to be a lineman somewhere in there. So I'm assuming that I won't even say DJ Humphrey because he's probably number 56. So, shucks. Receiver, cornerback, has been another cornerback. Mr. Murphy, it's got to be on that list. If he's not, I'd be surprised he's on the top 5. And running back, maybe? Running back. I had to take maybe one of the running backs. Chase Edmonds, but he's gone right now. Did we? Yeah.
What about a guy that scored 20 touchdowns in a season? That was a running back in 2016.
What?
David Johnson.
David Johnson. You know what? Honestly, I forgot that we traded David Johnson. I thought we got him in a trade, so I forgot that. Yeah, I was gonna say DJ, but that's why I went Chase Edmonds. I thought it was a running back. That's his top 5. That's the top 5 right there.
There isn't one, but somebody in the chat just nailed it.
The Junkyard Dog, right? Did we get Marcus Golden?
That's it.
Oh, Jordan P. knocking it down. Yeah, my
really?
Number, yeah. So
we drafted Marcus Golden.
They drafted Marcus Golden in 2015 in the second round, and he ended up going via free agency a couple years later to the Giants, and then Steve Keim, that rascal, he sent a 6th round pick to the Giants.
6th round pick, that dirty rascal.
And now he's racking up double-digit sacks for the 3rd time in his career. Marcus Golden was my 4th best Steve Keim draft pick. You had Tyrann Mathieu at 3. The Honey Badger, Frank, was an absolute just problem for opposing offenses. He was having a defensive player of the year campaign in 2015 before he tore his ACL. Number 2 on my list is the franchise quarterback, Kyler Murray. Because, look, it did save Steve Keim's job, even though we just talked about Steve Keim probably should have been fired before that. But him pivoting off of Josh Rosen for Kyler Murray, I think the decision was made for him. That's why I think it was an easy pick for Steve Keim, 1-1 with Kyler Murray. So my number 1 draft pick by Steve Keim is Buda Baker because he moved up in the 2nd round. He selected Buda Baker. the undersized safety out of Washington in the 2017 second round, and he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He was at one point the highest paid safety in the NFL, and I think he was Steve Keim's finest moment in the draft.
I had an opportunity to discuss this with Bo before the show started. The only way I disagree with him is I think that what was on the line to be the first GM in modern NFL history to take 2 quarterbacks in the top 10 in consecutive years, I would put that risk with Kyler Murray, especially with Kyler Murray being 5'8". I would put Kyler at number 1 just because of the risk involved. If you're going to argue like who's the best player at their position, like Budda Baker's a top 1 to 2 safety in the NFL, top 3 at worst. Kyler Murray's, somewhere between 5 to 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, the bottom half of the top 10. So I do think in terms of the best player, it is Budda Baker. I would also say, if you think about the rest of your top 10, Bo, and I was looking at it and I'm like, man, things get really thin, really fast. And it makes me a little bit uneasy because, okay, how did Steve Keim have all this success then, making the playoffs a handful of times and getting the NFC title game? Oh, it was by leveraging free agency. Well, free agency is basically dead and buried right now until the waves start again for some, lesser players after the draft. Cardinals were inactive in the month of March. So reading this list, Mr. Bobrock, which is fantastic. By the way, you can get it right now at gophnx.com. If you want to pay 50 cents for the first month, you can read it for free. If you don't like it, which you will, you don't have to come back. But if you want to come back, it's $8.99 for the subsequent months, or you can get a free t-shirt like this one, Arizona Wildcats, from our PHNX merchandise locker, under $60. Get a free t-shirt, get Bo's article. If you're feeling uneasy reading this article, it's because the Cardinals are inactive in free agency. They're going to have to rely on an outlier draft from Mr. Steve Keim.
See a lot of people poking fun at Andy Isabella. I ranked every single draft pick, all 66. There wasn't one guy that they put the card in for and was in this organization that I didn't rank. To round out the top 10, should I let everybody know the top 10?
Let's do it. DJ
Humphries, put some respect on his name, Frank Sanders. He's actually the only first-round pick that Steve Keim has signed to an extension. As of right now, as we record this podcast, he's the only guy that signed an extension. He made a Pro Bowl last year. Did he deserve it? I don't know, but he's been playing well. He's come a long way from when his nickname was Knee Deep, which the coaching staff said that's how far they put their foot up his ass to even make a point to him. Christian Kirk is number 7. Even though he didn't go over 1,000 yards receiving, 2,900 yards receiving for the Cardinals, 17 tutties, 236 receptions. Christian Kirk's my 7th, and that's, as Johnny's pointing out, it gets thin. John Brown, smoke, love some smoky. That was the beginning of the Steve Keim special. The under 6 foot, small school wide receiver. I feel like he's still chasing that rabbit to get this smoke again. Get John Brown, who had the only 1,000-yard receiving season from a Steve Keim draft pick, and out of Pittsburgh State, which isn't it in Kansas or some like weird place?
Gorillas.
The Gorillas. Chase Edmonds is 9, 4th-round pick. I thought at the end of the day, he parlayed it into a good contract with the Miami Dolphins. He had a good, solid 4-year Cardinal career. 10 is Byron Murphy. And then you're going to have to check out the rest of the list. Go PHNX.com. Andy Isabella is on there. So is Josh Rosen. But you got to go down the list to find those guys.
Sad part about that list, I think there's half of that is 5 and 5, maybe 5 and 5, or 7 out of the 10 is gone.
It's gone.
It's gone. They're young and gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part of the development we be talking about, why our team isn't great and the history of our team isn't great and why we got to go to free agency, because we have no development. 7 out of the 10 is gone from his draft. That's crazy. Like that's got to be mind-blowing to you guys. Like, this dude is not keeping guys, like, and they're young dudes. Like, this not like from knee injuries or the guy can't play anymore. I mean, like, that's blowing my mind, man. That's the top 10. We got 7 of the top out of the 10 is probably gone off that list. That's crazy, Bo.
Somebody asking in the chat, did you factor Jalen Thompson in that list? Bo did not. Supplemental draft, the last pick of the supplemental draft ever. Bo keeping it within late April. Jalen Thompson is a great pick by Steve Keim, but the pressure wasn't on. When the pressure's on in April, who is Steve Keim opting to draft? And unfortunately, he has not met the pressure. Now, I will say, Bo, the one piece of pushback I will give you is I think Hassan Reddick deserves to be higher than where he's ranked. To see where he's ranked, you have to check out the article, go phnx.com. But where I understand where you put him is Keim came out and said, well, Hassan Reddick's an inside linebacker. Had he helped himself, he would have put him at edge to begin with. And Hassan Reddick would probably still be with this organization. And I believe Hassan Reddick would be a top 10 player under the Steve Keim era. That's my opinion, though.
It's crazy, man. Like, these are guys that are young and gone. Like, it's just, it blows my mind that blows my mind that the names you just called are guys that like literally, and they've just, I mean, of course, Chase Edmonds just left and Christian Kirk just left, but Marcus Golden name was on the top list, and guess what? He was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought him back. Now we was thinking about bringing Hassan Reddick back. That's another name. We're going to watch these guys that we're letting go. Honey Badger went on to win the Super Bowl. Like, I can do that during my era when I was with the Cardinals, and the guys that we let go that went on to win Super Bowls. It's crazy to me that has continued with this organization, whether it be through general manager or Michael or something of not performing and playing well. But that, to me, it just blows my mind that out of the top 10, there's 7 guys that are already gone on to other teams and still playing in the NFL.
And several guys in the top 20, Frank, that are on this roster, as we mentioned, Jalen Thompson, that they're going into the final year of their contract. Byron Murphy, too, and Zach Allen, who's had a nice Cardinals career. He's emerging in the last couple of seasons. Those guys, unless they sign them income to deals this offseason, they're going to be playing in the final year of their contract, and likely they could hit the free agent market next offseason and get fat paydays just like Edmonds, Kirk, Chandler Jones did this past offseason. It's an interesting – would you call it philosophy? I don't know what they're doing. It's not working keeping talent in the building.
When I was here, Dad wouldn't give guys. Mr. Bidwell would not give guys long-term contracts. I was absolutely flabbergasted.
It's a bold strategy to go that route.
He didn't give guys long-term contracts depending on their money and what their amount was. He would let them go in a heartbeat. And there were a ton of guys leaving out of the locker room in Tempe, going to other places and winning Super Bowls. And if you look at it right now, it seems like that carousel has come back and somebody hopped on that ride to take it, because, I mean, just look at the amount of talent that we've had that have left this team and gone to other places. It's mind-blowing.
I heard a story, and this could be a myth, of that era of Cardinals football, where a guy we'll say he signed a $1 million contract, Frank, and he signed it in another state, and they had to priority mail the contract to him, next day and it cost $9.99, and the contract was then $999,092 because they took out the cost of the priority mail.
No
comment.
Was that you, Frank?
No, it was not me. That was not me. But I got drafted, and they flew me in from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I got here. I did my press conference. They gave me a hat and a shirt. I went to rookie camp. I was out playing through my rookie ball, and we finally got our first check. You know what was deducted out of the check? That hat and that shirt. Thank you, Mr. Bidwell.
Well, you better get to the next read after that. I can't top that. Nothing I can say can top that.
Hey, here.
love this franchise. Love it to death.
We got plenty of stories like that, bro. I got 1,000 stories that were guys that come in and say what they got charged for.
Hey, we got private jets now, Frank.
Yeah,
they got a private jet.
They got it's a different day for the Arizona Cardinals football club, because Michael Bill things now. And bringing some levity, some much needed levity to the show. JJ Watt to the rescue. We do have a new partner we're excited to tell you about. We are excited to welcome OG's Brands into the PHNX family. OG's is one of America's first original scratch-made cannabis kitchens and is dedicated to creating innovative and memorable cannabis-infused products that flavor life's journey. The quality of their products stem from the combination of accurate dosing and amazing flavor. Edibles are not a one-size-fits-all product, which is why OG's is proud to offer a wide range of products for all demographics and preferences. If you were on social media today, you're a Cardinals fan, you saw that J.J. Watt had a legendary, epic back and forth with a 90s icon. Frank Sanders, are you a Seinfeld fan?
I have watched several episodes, but when you guys do that list together, I was like, do I know that person? I was floored, but I like the setup, and I like the way we positioned him. I do.
Johnny, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Julia Louis-Dreyfas, who played Elaine on Seinfeld, has gone on to have an illustrious career, winning 6 Emmys on the show Veep, as well as her work on Seinfeld. JJ Watt took notice, must be binging a little Veep action on HBO Max, and he took to Twitter to comment on her greatness. He said, Julia Louis-Dreyfas won 6 consecutive Emmys for Veep, and I still think her performance might be underrated, to which the Queen herself subtweeted or quote tweeted and said, yeah, but I don't have 102 sacks yet. So I saw this and I thought to myself, okay, wouldn't it be funny to put together a who's who of Seinfeld characters and what positions they would play in football? So I've come up with this, gentlemen. I want your honest opinion on this, especially from those in the chat. This is our Seinfeld NFL positions. So starting with the offense, first of all, I think the defense is much more stacked when you look at this graphic. We're going to start with the offense. How can you not do the ageless one, Jay Peterman of Jay Peterman catalog? Nathan Peterman vibes a little bit right now. We've got Peterman's head on Colt McCoy's body. He's going to be the signal caller. A little bit of Kurt Warner, gray beard action going on. Jackie Childs, Kramer's infamous lawyer, following many of his hijinks. He's smooth as hell. He's going to play our Barry Sanders in the backfield. Kenny Banya, once upon a time, the understudy for Jerry Seinfeld, annoying as hell. He's going to play our little scat back receiver. My counterpart, Bro Brock, said he's got some Andy Isabella vibes. So we're going to post him at receiver. Not many options for receivers. I think it speaks to the lack of athleticism from this group. Cosmo Kramer, tweener tight end, more of a pass catcher than a blocker. He's got the length. Think Jimmy Graham-esque. Morty Seinfeld, the late Morty Seinfeld. He's going to play tackle. Andre Whitworth vibes. It's a little sloppy in the body, but gets the job done. And then we got Costanza himself. He can lift 100 pounds over his head. He's going to play either guard position. That's where we're going to cap things off offensively. And then on the flip side with the defense, Newman, of course, everybody's favorite mailman. He's going to be at the 3 technique, the nose tackle, flankered by Mr. Kruger, George's old boss, at 5 technique. He's a huge mountain of a man, that Calais Campbell role. And then my 2 edge rushers, I had to go with Elaine. She mentioned that she was coming after the sack record, and then flankered on the other side. Herb Chandler Jones is going to be soup Nazi. His aggression off the edge, I think, is going to be unparalleled. And then the man in the middle, the coordinator of the defense on the field, Mr. David Putty. If you remember the infamous Devils episode where he's got face painted up, he's going to be face painted in the middle. And then on the back end, my favorite pair of any parents in any sitcom ever, Mr. and Mrs. Costanza, Frank and Estelle, are going to be my free and strong safeties. And leading them all is going to be Jerry Seinfeld, the quality control coach, because what the hell is he, what kind of resume does he have other than just hanging out and shooting the shit with everybody? So that is my Seinfeld by positions. Let me give you your honest reaction and thoughts to all of that.
I think you got to get Seinfeld under center, though. I mean, he's got to be your QB, right? I mean, he's the star.
I think probably where I should have put him was because of his speed or lack thereof. Remember the episode where he did race one of his buddies, and he has that. I can't even remember the line he used. Deceptively fast or something like that. He should have been a burner opposite Kenny Banya. That's probably a missed opportunity on my end.
I think. Yeah. What do you got?
I don't have it, brother. I was going to try to do a Seinfeld voice, but I don't think I have it. Tony,
what's the deal? Yeah, it's I think Newman has got to be Sean McVay. You got him is your rival, and you're just like, hello, McVay. Every time he comes to the desert, and you got to deal with that. And then I've seen George Costanza. I think he'd be an epic. Get him inside, maybe as an interior defensive lineman, because when there was that fire that went down in the apartment, he's pushing little old ladies out of the way.
But see, can't you see him pulling on an ISO block? I think little Kyle Shanahan action, pulling upfield. He can move. He was going to be on one of my 2 offensive or defensive lines. He could really help the Cardinals right now on either line.
I love it. Jose lighting up the chat. Can't stand you, Costanza. That's perfect.
There are so many side characters to include. I probably missed some.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, you've got a full fleet of ex-boyfriend and girlfriends for the entire crew. It's great.
Good job.
We're excited. We're excited about it because
Bizarro World Kramer to play your other tight end. You could get a whole other, second unit with that crew.
All of Steinbrenner. Steinbrenner would have been my GM, my Steve Keim, of course. That makes too much sense not to happen. For all of the people that George has worked under could play on either side of the ball. I tried to keep it within the core central characters. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We love JJ Watt and his affinity for Seinfeld and for Veep with Julia Louis-Dreyfas. We hope, let's get some traction. We tweeted out one of the graphics under the engagement. If you guys see that, go ahead and give us a retweet. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff happening today outside of what's going on with Steve Wilks. So we thought we'd liven it up a little bit, Mr. Bill Brock.
Yeah, that was I loved it. Saw our whole team behind the scenes creating those graphics. Had a blast with it. We probably loved it way more than the audience actually likes it. It was just on a day that it's tough to talk about stuff like this when you're having a tough conversation about the organization that you cover, played for, like Frank Sanders. It's nice to kind of have a little fun at the end of the day.
Yeah, great job, guys.
Absolutely. We would like to tell you that right now, children 5 and older eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. The vaccine is the best tool we have to reduce the chances of getting sick. Vaccine can reduce the risk of being hospitalized or dying from the disease. Safe, free, and highly effective vaccines are available throughout Arizona. Visit azhealth.gov/find vaccine for a location near you. Make sure you hit up Go PHNX. Check out my latest article on Steve Keim's draft picks, every single one of them. I mean, we're talking like Cole Toner. We're talking Robert.
Please, I don't want to talk about Cole Toner.
Evan Boehm. I mean, some deep cuts. Every single one of them. We've got it. It's right there.
Thank God the article doesn't have the pick and then who was available shortly after that the Cardinals didn't take. We're not going to make you lose your lunch, but we are going to make sure my man Frank Sanders can catch the back 9 of the Masters here on a Thursday. Frank, you got your eyes glued here to the action? What's going on?
I'm locked in right here, brother. I'm locked in right here. I haven't had a chance to pay attention to the back end. I was just studying away, getting myself ready for the podcast. I saw who I needed to see. Tiger made it through the first day. He looked healthy. He looked good. He was in the moment, and hopefully his body will hold up that he can make it. It wouldn't be the same if he wasn't there, and it's just a blessing that he is there considering all the stuff he's gone through. But to have the will and the want to still do what he's doing, I will never doubt Tiger Woods when it comes to golf again. He's
a reason we watch, as is Kyler Murray to the Arizona Cardinals. That's what Tiger Woods is to the sport of golf. I want to remind everybody, if you're in the area, check out the Ainsworth tonight for the PHNX Diamondbacks watch party. Kicking off the season with first pitch against the San Diego Padres. We will be back tomorrow for our Friday show. For Bo Brock, Frank Sanders, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you tomorrow.